What if one day you simply fade away? Not physically disappear, no, but sever the invisible threads that bind you to others. Have you ever considered what would happen if you simply retreated into the shadows? Not out of anger or resentment, but from a profound desire for quiet and solitude. Most won't understand. Distance possesses a strange, almost frightening power. By leaving their orbit, you disrupt a fragile balance. It's not merely about them missing you. No, it's something more, something darker and deeper, striking the most vulnerable chords of their soul. When you leave, you create a gaping void, and a void always causes discomfort, not because of what's missing, but because of what it reveals. And here's what's intriguing. Your absence hurts not because of who you were to them, but because they can no longer project onto you. Make no mistake, people see not the real you, but merely who they find convenient for you to be. You are like a mirror in which people seek not themselves, but only the reflection of their own fears, deepest desires, and unfulfilled hopes. And when you decide to leave, they don't just stare into the resulting emptiness. No, they see with horror the shattered fragments of the reflection you so carefully maintained for them. Consider this. How many times have you been told how important you are, how essential, how they couldn't possibly manage without you? But haven't you noticed that these words always carry a selfish undertone, as if they're not talking about you, but about themselves? When you distance yourself, a fragile illusion shatters, and they are confronted with feelings they can't explain. There's discomfort, burning anger, agonizing guilt, and paralyzing fear. But most importantly, there's the question they're afraid to ask aloud. What will be left of me if you're no longer here? It's frightening, isn't it, to realize that someone needs you not out of love or genuine affection, but merely because you are a crutch, a support that allows them to avoid confronting their own demons. And yet, such is the bitter truth of many human relationships. We are mirrors, but unfortunately, often crutches too. When you decide to sever the thread, let go, and retreat into the shadows, the world around you seems to tremble. People accustomed to your support suddenly lose their balance, confronting the truth they had long fled. Their emotional dependence wasn't on you as a person, but on a phantom image they themselves created. And that's when the true game of shadows and mirrors begins. What do they feel when you vanish from their sight? Sadness, as some whisper, disappointment as others insist, or perhaps their souls are filled with the bitterness of resentment. No, the truth is far deeper and more terrifying. They themselves don't know what they feel, because the void left by your presence has no distinct form. It's not a pain that can be localized and named. It's not a wound that can be cleansed and bandaged. It's something that has penetrated deeper into the very essence of their being, something primitive and frightening. It's an echo of long-buried fears and confessions they never dared to voice. What goes on in their minds when you decide to leave? What sleeping shadows do you awaken with your departure? And most importantly, why does a simple decision to step aside possess such devastating power? Why does it stir such a storm in their souls, making them tremble? Today, we won't settle for banalities and superficial judgments. We will delve into the depths to understand what truly happens when you decide to let go. What do others feel but dare not say? What are they desperately trying to hide? And most importantly, why is this seemingly insignificant act capable of exposing the darkest and most hidden corners of their soul, making them shudder with horror at themselves? Prepare for a journey that won't be easy. There will be no simple answers, no truths that won't make you shudder. We are plunging into the abyss of human emotions, into those corners of the soul most fear to look into. But if you are here, something within you is already whispering. Leaving doesn't just change your life. It's like an earthquake, shaking the world of those who have forgotten how to live without you. And therein lies a mystery we must unravel. The moment you decide to leave, a strange game begins. People start rewriting your story. But this is no longer a narrative about who you truly are, but about who you were in their lives. And even more importantly, about what they lose by losing you. They seem to be trying to fill the resulting void with versions of you in which you wouldn't recognize yourself. They begin to interpret your every gesture, analyze from afar, searching for signs, patterns, anything that might help them explain your actions. But here's the catch. In reality, they aren't seeking to understand you, but rather to justify themselves. Your disappearance forces them to look into the abyss of a question they always avoided. How much of my emotional support was tied to this person? And for many, this truth becomes an unbearable burden. For in their desire to appear strong, independent, and self-sufficient, they are forced to admit something deeply human, yet painful. They needed you far more than they ever dared to admit to themselves. And you know what happens next? They begin to reconstruct your image in their memory, not because you changed, but because they need to create a narrative around your departure that won't shatter their world. Some idealize you as if your absence grants you a value they believe you didn't possess when present. Others, conversely, demonize you, convincing themselves that your departure was driven by selfishness, even betrayal. For deep down, it's easier to blame you than to admit your decision destabilized them. But the most fascinating part is observing how these feelings manifest differently. Everyone reacts uniquely depending on the role you played in their life. For some, your disappearance is like a fresh wound ripped open. For others, it's a pain they thought they had healed, but your absence mercilessly exposes it anew. And for a select few, you become a mirror reflecting their deepest fear, being left alone with their own emptiness. Herein lies the complexity. It's not just about their immediate reaction, but how it transforms over time. First, a flash of anger or confusion, but the further you are, the more abstract your absence becomes. Doubt creeps into their minds. Did they ever truly know you? Or were you merely a reflection of their own desires and fantasies? And this thought, like corrosive acid, begins to consume them from within. For your departure is not just a physical movement, it is symbolic. It's a break in the familiar dynamic, a loss of control over the situation. And the loss of control, as we know, breeds all-consuming anxiety. Do you know the bitterest irony? Often they themselves don't realize why your decision affected them so painfully. In their worldview, you didn't occupy such an important place, didn't play such a significant role, but your departure mercilessly reveals the truth. You occupied far more space in their lives than they were ever willing to admit. It's as if your absence highlights deep cracks in their emotional foundation, the very ones they carefully concealed. And it's not about you, but about what your distance forces them to confront. There's something frightening in how your departure becomes a true test for the relationships left behind. It mercilessly reveals the unpleasant truth. Many connections are based not on unconditional love or mutual respect, but on convenience, power dynamics, and unspoken desires. When you break these vicious cycles, people don't just lose a person, they lose a support, a system, a fragile balance that you inadvertently helped them maintain. And then arises the question everyone is afraid to ask: what will be left of them when you're gone? For some, the answer is simple. They will move on, find new connections, adapt to life without you. But for others, your departure is a gaping void they don't know how to fill. For your presence became an anchor for something more, something that, without you, begins to relentlessly crumble. But the most fascinating aspect is how the experience of separation transforms both sides. Not only do they feel the emptiness of your departure, but you also bear the imprint of this decision. However, that is a different story altogether. Today, we will delve into their world to understand what goes on in their hearts and minds when you leave. Believe me, your impact is far deeper than it appears at first glance. By deciding to leave, you don't just change someone else's life. You become a catalyst for a storm of emotions whose existence they never even suspected. Paradoxically, your absence is like a silent thunderclap. First silence, and then the ground gives way beneath them. In that moment, even if they remain silent, even if they don't admit it, an internal mechanism is triggered that they are powerless to stop. The first reaction is denial. They convince themselves they're just busy, it's temporary, they'll be back. They try to persuade themselves that your departure is trivial, a fleeting occurrence. But as they cling to this illusion, something begins to trouble them. Deep down, they feel that something has changed forever. This uncertainty, this agonizing why without an answer, becomes a seed of doubt that slowly but surely germinates. What went wrong? Perhaps they had unrealistic expectations, or on the contrary, failed to recognize your potential. These questions, like persistent gnats, swarm in their minds, sowing anxiety and confusion. But there is something far deeper and more profound. Your departure forces them to reevaluate themselves. For when you spend time together, your energies, your personalities inevitably intertwine. You become a part of their lives, even if it was never explicitly stated. And now, when you disappear, they don't just lose your presence. They lose a piece of themselves, the part they were when they were with you. And reconstructing it is no easy task. Suddenly, they find themselves needing to redefine who they are without you. And here begins something almost poetic. They start remembering you not as you truly were, but as they need to remember you. Each person creates their own unique version of you, one that perfectly fits their personal narrative, their pain, their understanding of your departure. Someone idealizes you, placing you on a pedestal. They were perfect, I needed them so much, and I, fool that I was, didn't know how to appreciate it. Others, conversely, demonize you, trying to justify their own pain. They left because they never cared about me. And only a few, the bravest and most honest, find the strength to face the truth. Perhaps I never truly understood what they needed. It is at this moment that the tension reaches its peak. While they battle the storm of their own feelings, you, from afar, transform into a shadow full of mysteries. Questions swarm in their minds. What are you doing? What are you thinking? Do you miss them even a little? This fragile uncertainty is like a thin thread they desperately pull, unable to stop. But their true nightmare is not the lack of answers, but the loss of control. Your departure shattered the familiar order, and collapsed patterns always breed chaos. Do you know the bitter irony? While they desperately try to rebuild their world without you, you yourself undergo a painful process of rebirth. Leaving is not simple. It's not just physical or emotional distancing. It's an act of incredible courage. It means looking in the mirror and firmly telling yourself, I need space to breathe, even if no one around you understands. And this, despite its necessity, can instill a chilling dread. I want to pause here for a moment. If you have read this far, it means my words have resonated deeply within you. Perhaps you yourself once left. Perhaps you felt the world around you crumble because of your decision. Or perhaps, conversely, someone left you, leaving you confused and agonizingly searching for answers. In any case, stop and reflect. How fragile is your inner world if it depends on the presence of others? And do you have the courage to let go and finally find the peace you long for? Your departure, however painful it may seem, can become a catalyst for awakening and growth for others. Sometimes the best way to help is not to stay out of obligation, but to make them realize they are strong and capable of moving forward on their own. Even if they see nothing but pain in it at first, they will eventually realize that it was the most valuable gift you could have given them. What follows this is not just reflections, but a true revelation. capable of forever changing your perception of relationships, decisions made, and most importantly, yourself.